And ChatGPT broke it into 4 categories: authoritarian leaders, terrorist leaders, organized crime figures, and war criminals. Now, that happens not to be on my list of the men who destroyed the Christian West. I believe that it's the idea people that actually are the most dangerous. We don't think in those categories.
What brought down the Twin Towers on 9/11?
Yeah.
And everybody at first says an airplane.
The terrorist.
Or terrorist. Mm-hmm. And the answer is no, it was an idea.
And welcome, friends, to the Generations broadcast. Kevin Swanson, your host, with you. Bill Jack from Worldview Academy, also in studio today. And we're going to come back to the book that started it all on this edition. Now, we have been talking about worldviews for a long time because ideas have consequences.
Good ideas have great consequences. Excellent ideas have excellent consequences. Bad ideas produce victims.
And lots of bad consequences. Yeah. And
so you said we're going to go back to the book. Are we talking about the Bible that started it all?
Not all the way back.
Not that far back.
Not that far back. But of course, the Bible got everything started for all of us. Yeah. That's first. But Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West, was the book really that inspired the Christian curriculum that we provided for the last 10 years by generations.org. So this is really the thing that kicked off the Generations curriculum, probably more than anything else, especially the literature approach that we took with the Generations curriculum project. Okay, now, some people say ideas aren't that big of a deal, but here's one of the ways I start off on the foreword in my book, Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West. Dr. Benjamin Weicker, in his book, 10 Books That Screwed Up the World and 5 Others That Didn't Help, told the story of the Scottish essayist Thomas Carlyle. He was once scolded at a dinner party for endlessly chattering about books. Ideas, Mr. Carlyle. Ideas, nothing but ideas. To which he replied, there once was a man called Rousseau who wrote a book containing nothing but ideas. The second edition was bound in the skins of those who laughed at the first. Of course, Carlyle is speaking of the French Revolution. That's right. So ideas have consequences, and we have to be those who understand those ideas, understand the consequences produced by those ideas. And I want to give a little more background as to why the book Apostate, but I want to begin with this question. Who are the most dangerous people in the world? Now, I did that search on Google and found out it was Islamic terrorists or neo-Nazis, and maybe a neo-Nazi ideologue. Okay, so that's where I wound up. Also did a ChatGPT on the same question, who are the most dangerous and evil people in the whole world? And ChatGPT broke it into 4 categories: authoritarian leaders, terrorist leaders, organized crime figures, and war criminals. Now, that happens not to be on my list of the men who destroyed the Christian West. I believe that it's the idea people that actually are the most dangerous. We don't think in those categories.
What brought down the Twin Towers on 9/11?
Yeah.
And everybody at first says an airplane.
The terrorist.
Or terrorist. Mm-hmm. And the answer is no, it was an idea.
Right.
Ideas brought down that.
Those guys.
What caused the death of 55 million people during World War II? Well, they'll say it was Hitler or it was the Nazis. No, behind those were ideas. Ideas do have consequences.
So not so much the authoritarian leaders, as ChatGPT puts it, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, terrorist leaders like Ayman al-Zawahiri or Abu Bakr, or organized crime figures like the El Mayo Zambada and El Mencho, the leader of the CJNG, a powerful Mexican drug cartel, extreme violence. They killed their hundreds. They killed their thousands. Perhaps, not many of these killed more than 100 or a couple hundred, maybe 1,000, maybe. But what about those who killed their hundreds of millions? What about the ideologues that brought about such devastation upon the entire world? What about these guys? So who are the most evil people in the world? Is it the serial killer who kills 25 people, or is it Margaret Sanger, who's responsible for 2.5 billion deaths in the world? Or is it Thomas Malthus, who is the philosopher who apparently influenced Margaret Sanger? Are you with me here? I mean, right. Was it the serial killer? Was it Margaret Sanger, who killed 2.5 billion, which would be orders of magnitude more than your average serial killer? Or was it the ideologue behind Margaret Sanger? So these are the sorts of questions we need to ask. Who is the most dangerous person in the world? Is it Adolf Hitler or Nietzsche, who was the philosopher behind Adolf Hitler? Was it Stalin or was it Marx? Was it Darwin or the racists that followed him, or the eugenics programs that showed up later in the 20th century? Is it Thomas Malthus or Margaret Sanger? So who are the most dangerous, the most evil people in the entire world? I put together 4 descriptives that really, I think, would help to arrive at the most dangerous and evil forces among the children of men. And these are the adjectives that I use. They have to be powerful. They have to be intelligent and even perhaps seductive in their intelligence. They have to be influential and evil. So powerful, intelligent, influential, and evil. And powerful in terms of their character and their spirit. Influential in terms of the people they wind up influencing, largely because of their powerful spirit that seems to bear so much influence. Intelligent in that they have a cohesive and persuasive form of writing and communication of ideas. So I think you have to put all of this together to identify the most dangerous, the most horrific people in the world who have brought more devastation upon the world than anybody else. And I categorize those people in this book, Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West. We'll speak more of this in just a moment on Generations.
Of all the events that we do here at Generations, probably one of the most important to our mission of passing on the faith is our annual Father and Son retreats. I'm Danny Craig, National Director here for Generations, sitting with David Braun, longtime Father-Son retreat attendee. David, what's been most impactful for you and your son attending the Father-Son retreats?
Danny, what's been most impactful for me has just been a great excuse to spend time with my son, first and foremost. Everyone's busy. And it's a great way to get away. It's 3 nights long, which gives you a lot of time to just be together. Mm-hmm. That's been the most impactful. And of course, the leadership has been great. They're humble, they're loving, they're kind. They just want to spend time with everyone who comes. And I'd say finally, the camaraderie of hundreds of other fathers and sons who are all in very different places, yet united in their desire to love their families well and their sons well. So we did a bunch of hiking, and it's right in your backyard. You just step out to your room and off you go. There's just miles and miles of trails. The zip line is a ton of fun. And then also just playing games at night, foosball, board games. And again, doing that alongside other fathers and sons has been the best part. It's absolutely worth it. And just realize you're going to learn so much more than you thought. You're going to be blessed in ways you didn't expect. You will absolutely return the following year, I guarantee it.
Friends, join us this year for the Colorado Father-Son Retreat in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, August 14th through 17th, and also second event, August 21st through 24th, for a great time of teaching, encouragement, fellowship with other dads, and ultimately the opportunity to step away and spend time on this important relationship in your family. Join us. Go to coloradofatherson.com. That's coloradofatherson.com.
And we are back on the Generations broadcast. Kevin Swanson with you, Bill Jack as well. Bill, I summarized the adjectives which describe the most evil nemesis, the most evil of all the powerful people that have ever existed in the history of the world, as those who are powerful, influential, intelligent, and seductive, as well as, pure, unadulterated evil. And they have brought this great devastation upon the world. In other words, you have to see something of their effects, their fruits, in order to know the sheer evil that these men represented as philosophers and the great thinkers who have brought about these consequences.
You mentioned seductive, and I think that's extremely important. I would substitute the word charismatic in the sense that they have a draw to them. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys at one of our founders, Randy Sims at Worldview Academy, did leadership lectures, and he talked about the character-driven leader opposed to the charismatic-driven leader. And a charismatic driven leader is all self-centered, and he's all about elevating himself, whereas the character-driven leader is the one who raises others up. And so I think that there's that charismatic flavor to these who are the most devastating and most evil leaders, influential people in the history of the world. And they draw people to themselves, but they use people. They have ideas, but these ideas abuse people.
Mm-hmm. And I would add one more characteristic to this, and Bill, I think there's got to be a spiritual element to this. There has to be a spiritual element in that you cannot bring about this much devastation upon the world if there isn't something of a spiritual influence upon you. And many of these leaders did acknowledge that in their own autobiographical comments, and we bring that out in Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West. But their power, their influence derived somewhat from demonic powers. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in high places. There's no question in my mind that Karl Marx, who would bring such devastation, hundreds of millions of dead bodies as a result of his ideologies taught in the 19th century and then brought to fruition in the 20th century, had to have had some spiritual influence about him. And my chapter on Karl Marx does bring that out. It does point out that he referred to himself as Apollyon, which is the destroyer, referred to as destroyer in the Greek or the Aramaic. But he identified himself with Apollyon, might have been influenced or possessed by the devil himself. So much of his personal life seemed to indicate that he had a demonic possession about him. And again, by their fruits ye shall know them. That's another theme that I work through this book, Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West, because Jesus did say that. If you got prophetic, leaders that are bringing some prophetic or some teaching ministry into the world, you're going to be able to identify the good or the evil about them by their fruits. By their fruits, Jesus said, you shall know them. That's Matthew chapter 7. And I think you can apply that very well to the 19th century apostates. And my point, of course, is that they were those who had a Christian background to them, but they had apostatized from that and brought about great devastation upon the earth as a consequence. So Karl Marx would be an example of somebody who claimed to be Apollyon, and some of his prose actually did acknowledge that he had come to bring destruction upon the earth, that he was a destroyer and he would destroy the world. And so much of the socialist, Marxist, communist, feminist ideologies of the last century and a half have brought about such devastation upon the world. And I think people need to know this stuff.
Yeah. And what you're talking about here are men and women who are antichrists. They are little antichrists.
Yes.
Okay. We're not talking about the antichrist. We're talking about those who are promoting evil, and they are antichrist, and they draw to themselves followers who will do their work, who will be their minions, who are deceived or they are deceiving others. But these particular characters throughout history have done the work of evil. They are the missionaries of evil.
And I believe that we need to be sure to point out those false prophets / philosophers of the last 150 years that have been incredibly powerful in gaining control of almost every one of our institutions. I'm talking about educational, the universities, the K-12 schools, the media, the movie production companies, the political situation, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why we live in a post-Christian world is because of these powerful apostates. I refer to them as the Nephilim. I've got several sections. I call the philosophers the Nephilim. I'll move on to the literary Nephilim and then the cultural Nephilim. And I refer to them as Nephilim because I think it's a helpful and an apropos descriptive of who these guys were. The Nephilim that appeared before the flood were extremely violent people that brought about great destruction upon the earth. And I do believe they were all of this. They were powerful, they were intelligent, they were influential, and they were evil.
And,
that's
very
the Nephilim.
Charismatic.
That's who they were.
They drew people
and they were
to themselves.
charismatic.
Yeah.
They had to have been in order to bring about such destruction upon the entire world. The Nephilim was the terrible tribe of men who came about by synthesis, an unholy marriage of the daughters of men and the sons of God. And so now you can say these were the two lines of the good line, the bad line. Some believe that there were some evil angels involved here. But whatever the case, a synthesis between the daughters of men, the sons of God, is an evil synthesis that comes about, producing this unholy marriage and a powerful influence upon the world. They have something of a character that is a strength of character, or as you said, a charisma about them, and a powerful, influential idea and objectives to leadership and such that worked within the very fiber of their being to bring about such powerful destruction upon the entire world. And that, I believe, is what happened in the 19th century. These are apostate men who had a Christian heritage, as in the case of Karl Marx. He'd been baptized into a Lutheran church. I think the same thing of Charles Darwin, who had a strong Anglican background. Think of Nietzsche, who was the son of a Lutheran pastor. John Paul Sartre was a great-great-grandson of, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 generations of Calvinist preachers. So these were the great, powerful men who had something of Christian heritage. They apostatized, became antichrists, and used this heritage to foul ends, bringing about just unimaginable horror upon the entire world. They become increasingly epistemologically self-conscious about their atheism, their autonomy. And I would also add their hatred of Jesus and their hatred of the Bible and their hatred of the cross. I give several examples of that in the back cover.
All of these
on the back cover.
Apostate.
Yeah, Apostate.
You give detailed descriptions of their background and their influence in this book.
And read several of the comments on the back. We got Nietzsche there. I got Mark Twain. Read some of
Nietzsche said, "The old God is abolished. I am the most terrible opponent of Christianity."
Any questions on that? The most terrible opponent of Christianity.
John Dewey, who is the father of modern American education, said, "God is a fated piece of metaphysical goods."
He's probably the most famous atheist of the 20th century. And by the way, the father of modern education, as you just said.
Yep.
Incredible. Yep. You take Mark Twain, the Bible is a wealth of obscenity and words of 1,000 lies. John Paul Sartre, I just mentioned him. I collared the Holy Ghost in the cellar, threw him out, atheism, a cruel affair. I think I've carried it through. So these are the testimonies of these extremely powerful philosophers and literary giants that brought such destruction upon the entire world. I think people need to know about this. Now, why do I call this the book that started it all for the curriculum? And I think first and foremost, Bill, it established a hard and fast antithesis between the ideas of the modern educational system, the humanism that has corrupted our world, and a Christian world and life view that we find rooted in Scripture. So I see this. I think if we outline it in the philosophy and literary world, and then we contrast that with the Scripture, and we contrast the lives of these men, the fruits of these men, with what Scripture would give to us, we would see that we need to create a whole different form of education for our children in this generation. And I think there's way too much synthesis in the world today. There's the idea that, it's all good out there. All these schools, the universities, the liberal arts educational program that you get out of your average liberal arts Christian college or just liberal arts secular college is all good. It's all good. And it's a huge synthesis in the mind of the average Christian. And I think it's time to come out from among them, be separate, saith the Lord, and see that we have allowed for each successive generation of young people to be bamboozled by bad ideas. And we have been robbed by that knowledge of God and Jesus Christ by these vain philosophies and vain deceit that comes out of the universities today.
I was just down in New Mexico, and so got down there on May 2nd, May 1st, I guess it was, May Day, okay? And there were May Day protests all over the country. So we went to the local May Day protest, and I ended up interviewing a woman who was there who's soon to be graduated from the University of New Mexico in law. And I asked her, what's your definition of justice? What's the role of government? And one of the statements she made was, Well, I don't believe we should assign blame anymore.
Wow.
Now, she's an attorney. Would you want her to put together your estate plan, let alone
you want her to be the next district attorney? Yeah.
Prosecute a criminal?
It's pretty sad.
Yeah. But ideas do have consequences, and she is the direct result of the educational system that was formed by John Dewey and men like him who sought to expunge the fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom.
Think about the influence of Charles Darwin upon World War II, World War I. I mean, think about the racism that was just shot through Germany, even before World War I, into World War II. The Japanese, the most popular books translated into Japanese in the later part of the 19th century was Spencer and Darwin and the evolutionary theories that verged on eugenics and racism. And Bill, you know that these were the primary philosophical ideas that motivated World War I, World War II, and ended with the killings of how many millions of people, not just in war, but also through the genocides. And that I think is directly related to the ideas of Charles Darwin and his eugenics theories. He applied, evolution to the social theory that works its way into Germany, works its way into Japan, actually worked its way into America as well.
Yeah.
You think about how much eugenics affected even Teddy Roosevelt and some of those early presidents in the 20th century. So the ideas of Charles Darwin influenced the 20th century more than I think any other ideas. And so Charles Darwin, probably the most influential thinker of the modern age, and one who brought about such devastation to the whole world. And think about today, I'd say 99.9% of universities have bought into the old Earth evolution model. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 colleges across America, maybe 15 or 20 colleges across America that would not receive it. But Bill, that's about a 99.9% of colleges across America.
And you're including Christian colleges.
I'm including Christian colleges have subscribed to an evolutionary theory, much of what Darwin propounded. So yeah, we're looking at extremely powerful, influential, demonically inspired thinkers that have set the direction for almost every institution in the modern age. And we need to warn our families, our Christian families, our pastors about these horrible ideas, the influence of these ideas. And Bill, I extend this into the literary world as well. And I believe that we need to be taking very, very careful, discerning look at the great literary giants of the last 200 years. And that's my point in Apostate. In fact, Mark Twain acknowledged that he had carried letters from Satan to the archangels contained in a book that was not published until the 1960s. He warned his progeny not to publish them, but these were the sort of ideas that he wanted to inculcate into the modern mind. And they were demonic ideas, extremely satanic ideas. I have an entire chapter on Mark Twain and the scary satanic influence upon him, and indeed probably the most influential apostate of the 19th century in introducing agnosticism, atheism, and a great deal of skepticism into the Christian world over the last 120 years or so. Same thing with Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne acknowledged that a demon had affected him in writing the Scarlet Letter. He wrote it, he said, under compulsion over a period of 16 days. And a friend of his said the same demon that affected me affected you in writing this letter. And Hawthorne acknowledged it was a book that was forged in the pit of hell itself. And so there's quite a bit of interesting data on Nathaniel Hawthorne's life. His trajectory was not good. It went the wrong direction. And by the time he writes the Scarlet Letter, it's one of the most horrible, hell-forged books that's ever been published in the history of America, and probably the most influential book in high school literature classes in this country over a period of at least a century. So, but most people aren't even aware of these biographical remarks, this biographical background, the horrible ideas that constitute books like the Scarlet Letter, and even Adventure of Huckleberry Finn, where Huck is put on the horns of a dilemma. You know, either you're going to accept the Bible and embrace slavery, or you're going to have to go to hell And Huck Finn, towards the end of the book, acknowledges that he would rather go to hell than to receive the Bible, which Mark Twain acknowledged was wealth of obscenity and upwards of 1,000 lies. He utterly hated the Bible and had nothing but blasphemous remarks to say about the God of the Bible. So again, most people don't understand this. And so what we've done is we published this book. It's been probably our most controversial book, but also our most influential book. No question about it. We probably sold more copies of this book than anything else we published as part of the Generations offerings. And the good news is we finally have it in audio form. So we're releasing Apostate in audio form. There's a lot of guys who are driving their trucks to work day by day, and they want to hear, they want to know more about this, but they don't have time to read. So we put an audio form now available at generations.org. So Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West, now available on audio form. I did part of it at the very beginning, and then my daughter does the rest of it. She reads the rest of the book, and I think it's a really good representation of this book, which is sort of our classic book, the book that started it all for our Generations curriculum. And you can get the book in audio form right now at generations.org. I think it's on sale this week at generations.org. Again, the book is Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West. Whatever happened to Western civilization, Christians have lost ground in every cultural area of leadership and influence in Europe and America since 1700. This is an indubitable fact. The remaining Christians search for an explanation. They want to know how it happened. Apostate tells the story of the decline and fall of Western civilization as experienced through the lives and ideas of the great philosophers, writers, and cultural leaders most responsible for its demise. Apostate is a story of demonic possession, insanity, suicide, mass murder, adultery, homosexuality, cultural and social revolutions, and unbridled maniacal apostasy away from the Christian church. It is the story of apostasy on a massive scale, but it is also a story of hope and victory for the last men standing in the ashes of Western civilization. It would be a testimony to the inevitable triumph of Jesus Christ over the great men of renown who tried to oppose the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's the back cover of Apostate, the Men Who Destroyed the Christian West, now available in audio form at generations.org. This is Kevin Swanson and Bill Jack, and we invite you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation.